Dim the lights, grab a snack, and try to relax. But don't say I didn't warn you. They said no one stayed in Cinder Hollow past the first frost. The town wasn't even on most maps anymore, and the road leading in had half fallen into the river below. But still, I went. I was sent by the state, Lillian Merritt, caseworker. Officially, I was there to follow up on a rash of unexplained child welfare reports, missing school attendance, and sudden family relocations. But unofficially, it was because no one else would go. I passed rusted road signs and houses that leaned like tired drunks. The air was thick with smoke that didn't come from chimneys. Every window I passed was shut tight. No curtains, no faces. Just glass, reflecting something I couldn't see. I stopped at a general store that was barely standing. The sign read, Barker's, EST 1901. Inside, it smelled of mildew and meat. An old man stood behind the counter, unmoving. "You're not from here," he said. Not a question. I nodded. Just here for a welfare check. His cloudy eyes stared past me, toward the door. "Then you best not stay past sundown." I smiled, tried to be polite. "Why?" He leaned in slowly. "Because once it sees you, it won't forget." I tried laughing, but it came out hollow. I walked out with a stale bottle of water and that warning ringing in my ears. Cinder Hollow was a ghost. But worse than that, it felt watched. As the sun began to dip behind the ridge, I found the first house on my list, the Candler family. The porch steps creaked, and I knocked. No answer. I turned the knob. It opened. Inside, dust. Empty cribs. Molded bowls of food. A child's doll lying face down on the floor, its hair torn out. And on the wall, written in a child's handwriting, were the words, "I am still here. But I'm not me anymore." I stood frozen in the doorway of the Candler house, my breath catching in my throat. The message on the wall looked fresh. No dust had settled on the letters, as if written minutes ago. I stepped closer, noticing something worse, scratch marks below the writing, as if a child had clawed at the wall in a frenzy. I turned suddenly. The hallway was empty. Still, I felt it, that pressure behind the eyes. A sense that something was observing, like the air itself was holding its breath. I called out, voice shaking. "Anyone here?" No answer. Just silence, and that old Appalachian silence wasn't peaceful, it was buried. Like the earth itself had seen too much and agreed never to speak of it again. In the back bedroom, I found a child's drawing on the floor. It showed a smiling family, mother, father, child. But the faces were all scratched out. Behind them loomed a tall figure made entirely of black scribbles. Underneath it, in jagged letters, "He lives in the thin." What the hell did that mean? I took a photo of it, then turned to leave, but the door to the bedroom slammed shut behind me. I ran to it, tugged hard. It opened like it never stuck at all. Outside, twilight was falling fast. I hurried back to my car. The roads were too steep to risk after dark, and I hadn't seen a single functioning light in the entire hollow. Just shapes in windows, unmoving, watching. The motel was 20 minutes up the ridge. I didn't want to go back to town, but I wasn't about to sleep in that house either. As I drove, something darted across the road. I hit the brakes. It looked like a child, barefoot, in pajamas. I jumped out, heart pounding. "Hey! Stop!" But the woods swallowed them whole. I stepped to the edge of the tree line. And from somewhere deep in the dark, I heard a child laugh, followed by a low, breathless voice mimicking it, like an echo warped by distance. He he he, he he he. Behind me, my car engine died. The forest stood still, unnaturally still. No bugs, no birds. Just that fading, twisted laugh curling out from the black timber like steam from a cracked pipe. I turned back toward my car. The headlights flickered once, then died completely. The dashboard lit up, blinked wildly, then went dark. Dead. I got in anyway, locking the doors. Then I saw it. Across the road, maybe 30 yards into the trees, something moved, slowly. Not walking. Gliding. It was tall. Too tall. Shoulders hunched, its limbs hung oddly, like they didn't know where to go. And then it stopped. Even in the dark, I could see it had no face. Not like a mask, no sockets, no mouth, no features at all. Just smooth, stretched skin, pale as candle wax. Then it tilted its head toward me. I couldn't breathe. Suddenly, it split, the body tearing from collar to stomach like paper. But there was nothing inside. Just an opening, and inside it, a flicker of something moving, like hands pressing against wet plastic. I screamed and slammed the horn. The sound echoed through the hollow like a war cry. The thing twitched. Twisted. Then slithered backward into the trees, disappearing between the trunks. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag, my flashlight, and started running up the ridge, toward the old church I'd seen earlier that day, its steeple still barely standing. I didn't dare look behind me, but I knew, it was following. Not walking. Not running. Sliding through the thin. When I reached the chapel, the front doors were rotted but open. Inside, it smelled like wet stone and old blood. Pews were shattered, pulpit gone, and above the altar, someone had written, "We are forgotten. But it remembers." I turned, panting. And on the far wall, something had followed me inside. But it wasn't the tall thing. It was a child. A little girl. Face pale, eyes wide. Mouth smiling, but the smile was too wide. Unnatural. She didn't blink. Then she spoke, not in her voice, but something else's. "You saw it, didn't you? The hollowing. It knows your shape now." My knees weakened. What do you mean?" The child cocked her head. "You don't belong in this place. Now it will make you belong." Behind her, I saw shadows crawling up the church walls, and they were reaching for me. The shadows crept like spilled ink, sliding up the stone walls in twitching shapes. I backed away, flashlight trembling in my grip, the beam stuttering against the dark like it knew it wasn't welcome. The little girl just stood there. Smiling. Still. Unblinking. I forced the words out. "Who are you?" She tilted her head, the smile never leaving her lips. Then she whispered. I was the last one who tried to run. Something cracked above me, dry wood, old beams, creaking under unseen weight. I pointed the flashlight at the ceiling. Nothing. But then. Thump. A heavy step above. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. Too heavy to be human. The girl stepped back into the dark. "You'll hear it again," she said softly. "That knocking. The hollowing doesn't speak. It knocks. And every time you hear it, it's closer." I tried the church door. Stuck. I yanked harder. Still stuck. Thump. Thump. From the ceiling again, dust raining down. Something crawling just above me, dragging its body. My flashlight flickered out. I was swallowed whole by the dark. And then, I heard it. A low, slow knocking. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it came from inside the walls. I pressed my back against the church doors. My heart slammed against my ribs. Get out of me, get out, get out. I didn't even realize I was screaming. Light burst back from the flashlight just long enough for me to see the girl wasn't there anymore. Only the same scribbled shape I'd seen in the Candler house, drawn in soot across the altar wall. Its limbs were longer now. Its head, tilted. Knock, knock, knock. Now it was behind me. The church doors flew open with a crash, and I fell backward onto the cold grass. I scrambled up and ran. Ran like the devil himself was chewing my heels. The trees were wrong now. Taller. Closer. Moving. The hollow had shifted. Everything felt thinner. Like the world was wearing someone else's skin. I didn't stop until I saw lights, a small cabin with flickering fire through the windows. A woman stood on the porch holding a lantern. She looked at me like she'd been expecting me. "Come in," she said. "Before it finishes what it started." The woman didn't wait for me to speak. She simply turned and walked back inside, lantern swaying in her hand. I hesitated on the porch, heart still pounding, breath ragged. The trees behind me whispered, or maybe that was my own blood rushing in fear. Then I stepped inside. The air was warm and smelled of old cedar, smoke, and something sweet, maybe lavender or rosemary. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, some tied with red thread. The cabin was clean, but old. The kind of old that felt remembered, not just aged. She set the lantern down and finally looked me in the eye. Her face was lined, her eyes dark and sharp like chipped obsidian. "You're the one they sent, aren't you?" she said. I nodded, throat dry. "Lillian Merritt. Caseworker." She scoffed. "Doesn't matter what they call you. The Hollow's already tasted you." I swallowed hard. "What is it? What is the hollowing?" She didn't answer right away. Just stirred a kettle on the stove. Then, softly. "It's not a ghost. It's not a curse. It's a hunger." I blinked. "A hunger?" She nodded. "It started long before roads came here. Before names. Before the mountain had its bones named. The people here once called it, Thin de Rat, the thin between. It's not alive, not the way we are. It feeds on identity." I stared. "I don't understand." She finally sat across from me. "When it chooses you, it begins peeling. First, it makes you forget things, small things. Then it takes your reflection. Your shadow. Your name. Until you don't know if you're you anymore. That's when it wears you." My hands began to shake. "That girl in the church, she said it knows my shape now." The woman closed her eyes. "Then it's already begun. You've been marked." I stood, panic setting in. There has to be a way out of this. She opened her eyes again, and they were filled with pity. "Only one." "What is it?" "You have to return what it took, before it finishes taking you." "But it hasn't taken anything yet." She reached behind her and pulled out a mirror. Held it toward me. And when I looked, I wasn't there. No reflection. Just the room, her, the walls. But not me. Not even my shadow did. I stumbled backward from the mirror, knocking over a wooden chair. That's not possible, I said, but the words tasted wrong. Like something foreign trying to mimic the sound of my voice. The woman didn't flinch. You're unraveling, she said softly. First the reflection, then the memories, then the name. I clenched my fists. You said I could stop it. That there's a way out. There is. But it isn't easy. The hollowing doesn't just take. It borrows. You have to offer it something older. Something it doesn't understand. Like what? She hesitated. Truth, she said at last. Something buried. Something real. You've got to find what it took from someone else, and give it back. That doesn't make sense. She stood and walked to a small cedar chest by the fireplace. From it, she pulled a stack of yellowed photographs and laid them on the table. Children. Families. All smiling. Every single photo had one thing in common. Their faces were smudged out. I've been keeping track, she said. All of them lived here. All of them forgot. Their names, their lives, their own blood kin. I've watched them wander the woods, smiling like dolls. She picked one photo out from the stack and handed it to me. It was the girl from the church. She was my granddaughter. I froze. She wandered out into the thin when she was 6. Said she heard her mother singing in the woods. Her mother had been dead 2 years. The photo was dated, April 3, 1986. That girl hadn't aged a day. I sat down hard, the room spinning. Then, if I find what it took from her, you might buy back a piece of yourself. Or hers. If you're lucky. She handed me a pendant, simple, round, made of wood and bone. She used to wear this. Take it to where you saw her. Call her by her name. But be warned, if it's not truly hers, it'll know. And then it'll take more. I stared at the charm. It was warm. What's her name? I asked. The woman looked toward the fire. Hazel. Hazel Dorn. Outside, the wind howled like a throat being torn open. And beneath it, I could hear a whisper. Knock, knock, knock. I left the cabin before dawn, Hazel's pendant clutched tight in my fist. The old woman watched me from the porch, lips pressed thin. Don't speak unless you must, she warned. It can wear voices now. The trees were thicker than I remembered, closer, bent inward like they were watching. The path I'd taken before was gone. No tire tracks. No footprints. Only a soft layer of ash covering the forest floor, muffling each step. The forest didn't want me back. But I went anyway. As I climbed the ridge toward the old church, the sky began to dim, even though the sun had just risen. That's how you knew you were inside it, the thin. The hollowing bent time like bark under rot. By the time I saw the chapel again, it was barely standing. Roof half caved, door hanging by a hinge. Smoke drifted from the cracks like something was breathing inside. I stepped in. The pews were all wrong, twisted, warped, angled toward the pulpit like a crowd frozen mid-turn. Something had drawn symbols on the floor in what looked like soot and blood. They pulsed faintly, as if whispering beneath the surface. And then I saw her. Hazel. Sitting on the altar like a doll left too long in the sun. Head cocked, dress clean, feet bare. She looked up and smiled. You came back, she said. Her voice was hers, but there was something behind it. A shadow in the throat. I held the pendant out. Hazel Dorn. This is yours. She tilted her head. Is it? My heart pounded. Your grandmother gave it to me. Her eyes twitched. A tremor ran down her arm like static. That name, it tickles. Like I knew it, a long time ago. I took a step forward. You wore it when you vanished. She stared at the charm. And for a brief second, she changed. Her face fell. Her smile cracked. Her eyes filled with something that hadn't been there before. Recognition. I remember, she whispered. Then, the air shattered. A sound like 1,000 voices screaming through burlap. The walls warped. The shadows rose up behind Hazel, stretching into long, writhing limbs. Her body began to convulse, seizing, eyes rolling back. And then, it stepped out of her. The hollowing. No face. No sound. Just a ripple in the air, like reality flinched. It hovered between me and Hazel's shaking body. I did the only thing I could think of. I held the pendant out and screamed her name. Hazel Dorn. The air ignited. It let out a soundless shriek, its form splintering like glass struck with a hammer. Hazel collapsed to the floor. And the hollowing, melted into the wood, the air, the shadows, gone. For now. I ran to her. She looked up at me with wet, terrified eyes. I remember my name, she whispered. Thank you. Then her hand gripped mine. But it was cold. The cold in Hazel's grip wasn't just chill, it was the weight of something else, something that shouldn't live in the living. I tried to pull her close, but she slipped away like smoke caught in my fingers. We have to leave, I whispered, voice breaking. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, as if the shadows inside her weren't done whispering yet. The church groaned around us, its rotting bones settling deeper into the earth. The symbols on the floor pulsed darker, and the air felt thick, like the forest itself was holding its breath. I glanced at the pendant in my palm. It glowed faintly, a beacon, but I wasn't sure if it was guiding us out, or deeper in. Outside, the trees swayed even though the air was still. A low hum crept through the branches, a voice too soft to understand but too persistent to ignore. We ran. The path I'd tried to follow before was gone again, replaced by tangled roots and shifting shadows. Hazel stumbled, and I caught her just before she fell into a pit that wasn't there moments ago. We're not safe, she murmured. I felt it then, something crawling beneath my skin, a seed of darkness sprouting where hope used to be. The hollowing wasn't just around us. It was inside. And it was hungry. As the forest closed in, I realized the nightmare wasn't just surviving the hollow. It was surviving myself that I forced myself to keep moving, every step heavier than the last. Hazel's hand, still icy, gripped mine tighter. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches twisting into grasping fingers, scraping at my skin, trying to pull me back. I think, it's inside me, I gasped, voice ragged. The hollowing. It's not just out there anymore. Hazel's eyes flashed with fear and something else, determination. Then we fight it. Or we lose ourselves. We pushed on, deeper into the wild heart of the forest. The pendant pulsed in my palm, its glow dimming and flaring like a heartbeat. Every time it flared, the shadows recoiled, but the darkness inside me surged. A sudden chill ran down my spine. From behind, a whisper floated through the trees, low and twisting. You brought it back, you belong to the hollow now. I spun around, but there was nothing. Only the thick fog curling between the trunks. Hazel pulled me forward, urgency breaking through her trembling. There's a way out. The old well near the ridge. It's the only place it can't follow. I wanted to believe her. To believe anything but the creeping dread that maybe, the hollow wasn't just a place. Maybe it was the part of us that gave in. As we neared the ridge, the ground cracked, and the forest's breath turned sour. The well stood open, a black mouth in the earth, swallowing the weak morning light. I looked at Hazel, at the pendant fading in my hand. Ready? Her nod was a whisper. We stepped toward the edge, toward the unknown, knowing that crossing that threshold might mean leaving behind who we were. Or losing everything forever. The wind howled as we approached the well, its black mouth swallowing the dawn light like a maw of despair. Hazel's grip on my hand was ice cold, but firmer than ever. I felt the pendant pulse one last time, then grow silent, like a heartbeat stopped. I looked down into the abyss. The air smelled of earth and forgotten things, a heavy, suffocating weight that pressed on my chest. The hollowing's whisper echoed from its depths, promises, threats, the lure of surrender. Go, Hazel urged, her voice cracking. I'll follow. I hesitated. The forest behind us groaned, shadows clawing at the edges of my vision. Something inside me screamed to turn away, to run deeper into the nightmare, but the well was the only promise of freedom. Stepping closer, I felt the cold seep into my bones. I didn't look back. 1 step. 2 steps. The edge gave way beneath me. I fell. Cold. Darkness. Silence. And then a voice, distant, but unmistakably mine, calling out from the depths. I was falling, not into earth, but into myself. The hollowing wasn't just a place, not just a curse. It was a fracture in the soul. And in that abyss, I faced the darkest reflection of who I'd become, the fall stretched into forever, a void without bottom, where time unraveled and memories twisted like snarled roots. I landed on cold stone, but it wasn't earth, it was the fractured mirror of my own mind, splintered and bleeding. All around me, shadows coalesced into faces, mine, Hazel's, the old woman's, twisted in agony, their eyes hollow and accusing. A voice echoed from the blackness, layered and jagged. You wanted to leave. But you brought the hollow with you. Now you belong to it. I staggered, the weight of the pendant pulsing weakly in my hand. It was the only tether left to the world. Above, fragile as a dying flame. Hazel's whisper brushed past me like a ghost. Fight it, Lillian. Fight or be lost. I clenched the pendant, feeling warmth spark, a shard of hope in the abyss. Around me, the shadows writhed, but I stepped forward, breaking through the darkness with every heartbeat. The hollow was hunger, but also fear, fear of being seen, of being fought. And maybe, just maybe, it could be broken. That I pressed forward, each step echoing through the hollow void inside me. The shadows clawed at my ankles, whispering doubts and fears, reminders of every failure, every secret buried deep. Give in, they hissed. You're already lost. But the pendant burned bright now, a beacon slicing through the darkness. I raised it high, and light spilled out like a pulse, warm, steady, defiant. The faces in the shadows screamed, their twisted forms dissolving into mist. A familiar voice broke through the chaos. Lillian, you're stronger than the hollowing. Remember who you are. Hazel's face appeared beside me, eyes steady, no longer cold but fierce. I'm here, she said. Together. The darkness recoiled, shattering like glass in a storm. I felt the fracture inside me begin to close, slow and agonizing, but real. And then, light. Warmth flooding back. The well beneath me cracked, and I was rising, pulled by a force older than the forest itself. When I broke the surface, the dawn was real, soft and golden. Hazel was there, alive, her hand warm in mine. The hollowing was behind us, a scar in the earth, but we were free. For now, the forest seemed quieter now, as if holding its breath. Hazel and I stood at the edge of the woods, the pendant resting heavy in my palm. It no longer glowed, but its weight was a reminder, of what we'd faced, and what we'd brought back. "Do you think it's really over?" Hazel asked, eyes scanning the shadows. I swallowed hard. "I don't think anything like this ever ends." Behind us, the trees whispered, and somewhere deep in the forest, a faint pulse echoed, the slow, steady heartbeat of the hollowing, waiting. Waiting for the next soul brave, or foolish, enough to wander too close. And maybe, just maybe, waiting for me. The end, for now.